Welcome to the Pencil Bob channel. I hope you enjoy my stories.
I don't think anyone moves into a neighborhood expecting their kids' laughter to be treated like a crime. We'd been here a little over 2 years. Lily was 7, full of energy, and she loved the backyard. She'd run with her jump rope, chase the dog, or just sing silly songs to herself. It wasn't screaming at midnight, it wasn't drums in the garage, it was a kid enjoying daylight. That was apparently enough to drive Karen crazy. She lived 2 houses down, always peeking out from behind her curtains or standing on her porch with her arms folded. She never said much to me directly at first, but I noticed the way her head snapped toward Lily whenever she laughed too loud. Her face tightened, like even the sound of joy offended her. The first sign something was off came one Saturday morning. I was watering the lawn, and I noticed little gray boxes lined up along her fence line. At first, I thought they were some kind of garden gadgets. Then I saw her kneeling down, checking one, writing on a clipboard. She noticed me staring and called out across the yard. "These are decibel meters," she said, raising her voice just enough to carry over. "We're monitoring sound levels now." "Just so you know," I laughed, because it sounded insane. "For what? Birds," she didn't laugh back. "For your daughter. Her yelling is disruptive." "I'm collecting data." I stared at her, hose in my hand. "You're seriously tracking my 7-year-old? Children are not exempt from community standards," she said flatly. Then she turned, scribbled something down, and went inside. That night, Lily asked why the mean lady kept staring at her. I brushed it off. I told her some people just don't like noise, but she didn't need to worry. I thought that would be the end of it. 2 days later, I got a letter. Formal warning, noise violation. It was stamped with the HOA's seal. It said multiple complaints had been filed against us, supported by documented readings. And if Lily continued her disruptive play, we could face fines. I was furious. I called the number on the letter, and the HOA's secretary told me to take it up with the president. His name was Victor. I'd seen him at a couple of meetings before, always talking in that low, commanding voice, the kind of man who loved hearing himself speak. The next evening I heard a knock. When I opened the door, there he was. Behind him stood 2 board members I didn't know well, and standing farther back on the sidewalk, pretending not to listen but very obviously listening, was Karen. Victor gave me a polite smile that didn't reach his eyes. "Mark, we've had some complaints." I folded my arms. "Yeah, I got your letter. You've got to be kidding me. It's my daughter playing in our yard." "Your neighbor has provided thorough documentation," Victor said smoothly. "Decibel readings, timestamps, consistent patterns. We have to enforce the rules fairly." "She's 7, I snapped. "She plays outside for an hour after school, maybe 2 on weekends. That's not unreasonable," the taller board member cleared his throat. "It's not just about hours. It's about the nature of the noise." I stepped forward. "What nature?" She's laughing. "Do you want her to whisper on a swing set?" From the sidewalk, Karen piped up. "It's constant. The shrieking carries through my walls. You don't live in my house, you don't hear what I hear." "She's not shrieking," I shot back. "She's a kid." Victor raised a hand like he was a judge in a courtroom. "We're not here to argue the details. We're here to warn you. The board expects compliance. If the disturbances continue, fines will follow." I laughed bitterly. "You're seriously threatening me because my daughter laughs too loud?" Victor's smile vanished. "I'm reminding you of the rules. They exist for a reason." I could feel my face heating up, but Lily was standing behind me in the hall watching. I didn't want her to see me lose it. So I said, "I'll take this up at the next board meeting." "You're welcome to attend," Victor replied. Then he turned, signaling the others. Karen lingered, smirking as if she'd won a battle. When I shut the door, Lily whispered, "Did I do something wrong?" I knelt down and pulled her close. "No, sweetheart, you didn't do anything wrong," but inside I was seething. The next few days, Karen made a show of being on her lawn whenever Lily was outside. She'd stand with her phone raised, recording. She'd scribble notes on that clipboard. She even adjusted her decibel meters in plain sight, like she wanted me to know she was watching. One afternoon, Lily kicked her ball into the edge of Karen's yard. She froze, looked at me, then whispered, "Can I get it?" I walked over with her. Karen came out instantly, holding up her phone like a weapon. "Stay off my property," she barked. I picked up the ball and glared at her. "You really enjoy this, don't you?" "I enjoy peace and quiet," she snapped. "Which I don't get because of you." Lily hid behind my leg. I tossed the ball back into our yard without answering. I could feel Karen's eyes on my back the whole way. That night another letter came. Final warning. Noise violation. This one was harsher. It said continued disturbances would result in fines, escalating penalties, and possible restrictions on outdoor activities. I read it 3 times. Restricting outdoor activities? Were they seriously threatening to ban my daughter from her own yard? I crumpled the paper in my fist. The next HOA board meeting couldn't come fast enough. But before I even got to that, another envelope showed up in the mail, thicker than the last. I opened it, heart pounding, and there it was, an official notice. If Lily does not comply with silent play guidelines immediately, you will be fined $250 for each violation. I sat at the table, staring at the words. Silent play? What the hell did that even mean? Outside, I could hear Lily laughing as she chased the dog across the yard. And all I could think was, how far were they really willing to take this? The morning after the letter arrived, I couldn't even get Lily to focus on breakfast. She kept glancing out the window, worried about Karen. I tried to explain again that she hadn't done anything wrong, but at 7 the idea that she could be banned from her own yard was terrifying. I just want to play, Daddy, she said, poking at her cereal. I didn't make anyone mad on purpose. I know, kiddo, I said, ruffling her hair. No one can stop you from enjoying yourself, but I had a sinking feeling they could. I decided I needed to attend the next HOA board meeting. It was supposed to be routine, but at this point, I wanted to confront Victor face to face. I brought my notebook, printed out timestamps of Lily playing, recordings from the backyard, and even a few statements from neighbors who had witnessed nothing unusual. When I arrived, Karen was already there, standing by the door, looking smug. Victor sat at the head of the table, arms crossed, like he owned the place. Other board members filed in, murmuring greetings. I noticed 1 or 2 avoided my eyes. I had a feeling they didn't want to get involved. Mark, Victor said smoothly when I walked in. Thank you for attending. I hope we can resolve this amicably. I didn't bother smiling. I hope so too, but I have a feeling you've already decided I'm the problem. Victor leaned back. The board relies on facts. Karen has provided thorough documentation, consistent readings over several days. It's hard to argue with science. I slammed my notebook on the table. Science? This is a 7-year-old girl. She plays outside like any child should. Your readings don't prove she's a problem, Karen snickered softly. It's funny you think I'd fabricate anything. I'm just protecting the neighborhood. Maybe if she wasn't so loud, we wouldn't be here. I felt my face get hot. Protecting the neighborhood? You've got decibel meters in your yard, like some kind of surveillance operation. You're obsessed, Victor cut in, his voice calm but firm. Mark, the board needs to be impartial. Please present your evidence. Let's keep this civil. I flipped open my notebook and started showing timestamps, sound logs, and videos of Lily playing at completely normal levels, here, and here. Look at these neighbors standing in their yards. They hear nothing unusual. One board member shifted uncomfortably. Another cleared his throat, but before they could speak, Victor held up a hand. Thank you for your evidence. We'll consider it. Karen rolled her eyes. Consider it? My data is clear. She's disturbing the peace. Again, the neighborhood has rights. I leaned forward. Rights? Whose rights? A child's right to play? Or your obsession with silence? Victor shook his head. Mark, please. This isn't personal. It's about rules. I couldn't believe it. Victor was clearly defending Karen far more than he should. It didn't make sense unless... I pushed the thought aside. I didn't want to believe the board president was personally involved in this. After what felt like forever, Victor called a vote. The board decided that my initial fines would stand $250 for each violation. He even delivered the first fine personally, sliding the paper across the table with a smug expression, Karen sitting nearby like she'd won a trophy. I grabbed the letter. You can't be serious. This is insane. I'm being punished for my kid enjoying her own yard. Victor didn't flinch. Rules are rules. We're just enforcing them fairly. Karen smiled, glancing at me. See, justice is served. I wanted to scream. Instead, I left the meeting with Lily waiting in the car. She had tried to cheer me up, saying, Daddy, maybe they'll see it's not fair. I drove home feeling trapped. Every time I looked at Lily, laughing and humming, I imagined Victor's face at the meeting, leaning back smugly, Karen's eyes sparkling with satisfaction. The way they seemed to work together made my stomach churn. Over the next week, Karen made it impossible to ignore her presence. She would stand near the fence filming Lily, making notes, waving the decibel meters for me to see. I tried to ignore it, tried to let Lily continue playing, but every moment outside felt like walking on a tightrope. Then came the next escalation. A letter marked urgent. Second fine. The language was sterner this time. Fines would increase for every instance of disturbance. If Lily continued to laugh above the measured decibel threshold, the HOA threatened further action. I could feel the weight of it. I cornered Victor in the mailbox area one morning. This is harassment, I said. You're targeting a child. What's going on here? Victor smiled politely. I assure you, Mark, the board is merely upholding neighborhood standards. Children are not exempt, I pressed further. Why do you protect Karen at every turn? Do you even look at her violations? Victor's expression didn't change. We are impartial as the board always is. I knew he was lying. Something was off. He wasn't impartial. Karen had some kind of advantage, and I couldn't figure out why yet. That night, Lily whispered as we tucked her in, "Daddy, am I going to get in trouble if I play tomorrow?" I held her close. "No, kiddo, we'll figure this out. Don't worry." But deep down, I knew we were running out of options. The final straw came a few days later. I was working on the yard, edging the flower beds, when I noticed Karen standing in the middle of her lawn, phone raised, recording. I waved, thinking maybe if I showed calm she'd back off. She didn't. She started pointing at Lily, mouthing something I couldn't hear. I walked over. "Seriously, she's just playing, not just playing," Karen snapped. "You're violating community standards again." I felt rage bubble up. "You're obsessed. This is insane. I'm calling the board about your own violations next." Karen tilted her head, smiling. "Go ahead, but remember, Victor will always side with me. Don't bother wasting your time." Her words cut deeper than I expected. She wasn't just complaining, she had protection, and Victor was part of it. That night I stared at the stack of letters, each more threatening than the last. Silent play, fines, possible restrictions. I didn't sleep. My mind raced. How far would they go? What else could they do to stop my daughter from being a kid? And then I realized I couldn't just fight with words anymore. I needed proof. I needed evidence that Karen wasn't just a concerned neighbor, that she was abusing the rules. And I needed to figure out why Victor was defending her so completely, because whatever it wasn't about rules. After the board meeting and the first fines, I couldn't stop thinking about what Karen had said. Victor will always side with me. She'd said it like it was a fact, like some unbreakable rule. But why would the HOA president care so much about one neighbor's complaints, especially when her claims were absurd? I started paying closer attention. I didn't say anything yet, didn't confront anyone. I watched the patterns. Karen had a schedule. She would go outside whenever Lily was playing, often at odd hours, phones out, scribbling notes. But one night I noticed something different. Victor's car was parked at Karen's house. Not for a few minutes, hours. Late at night. I thought it might be a fluke, but then I saw him leave, glance around like he didn't want to be seen, and drive off quietly. I made a mental note. Something was going on. Meanwhile, Karen's noise complaints continued. Every little sound Lily made was being logged. I started documenting it all, recording the exact time she played, measuring sound levels myself. I even walked around the neighborhood with my phone recording Lily's laughter. The readings were completely normal. I printed everything out and started organizing it. A clear timeline of innocence. The next morning, I walked over to one neighbor, Mrs. Harris, who had always been friendly but stayed out of HOA drama. "Hey, have you noticed anything odd?" I asked. She looked at me nervously. "Odd? You mean with Karen and Victor?" I froze. "What do you know?" "Oh, I've seen him at her house late at night. Sometimes her husband's away. Sometimes, before the board meetings, people talk, Mark. But no one wants to say anything out loud." I felt my stomach drop. It made sense. Of course it made sense. Karen had protection, and Victor had a reason to protect her. Their little alliance explained why the board ignored her own violations. I kept it to myself for now, but it fueled my determination. I had to get concrete proof. The next day I noticed something I couldn't ignore. Karen had a dog barking constantly at all hours, and her backyard, full of unapproved decorations and a swing set built without permits. Her hedges were overgrown, her trash cans weren't stored according to rules. I started taking pictures. The more I looked, the more I realized she was a hypocrite. Every single violation she had, Victor ignored. I decided to confront Victor quietly at the mailbox one morning. He came walking, coffee in hand, looking like he owned the street. "Victor," I started, keeping my voice steady, "you've ignored her violations. Dogs barking late, unapproved structures." "Why?" He raised an eyebrow. "I don't ignore violations, Mark. I review them carefully." "Carefully?" I asked. "You protect her every time, every single time, and yet you penalize my daughter for normal play." Victor smiled politely. "The board makes decisions based on complaints and evidence. That's all. Evidence." I laughed bitterly. "Her evidence is a decibel meter and obsession. Meanwhile, she's breaking your precious rules constantly. Why do you protect her?" His eyes flickered just for a second, and then he looked away. I didn't catch it, but it was enough. Something was definitely going on. That night I didn't sleep. I reviewed my notes, my pictures, my recordings. And then I realized I needed more proof. I needed something undeniable, photographic, timestamped. I needed to catch Victor at her house at night. A few days later, I stayed up late. From my window, I saw Victor's car pull into Karen's driveway around 11. I snapped pictures, zoomed in with my camera. He stayed for hours. When he left, I even managed to catch him sneaking a glance around the street, making sure no one was watching. The next day, I went over to another neighbor, Greg, whose kids played in the street sometimes. I told him I had noticed Victor's car at Karen's. He nodded quickly. Yeah, he said, lowering his voice. I saw it too, not just once. He's over there late at night, too many times. But everyone's scared. You can't just accuse the HOA president. I'm not accusing anyone yet, I said. I need proof. Something solid, marking down the times, recording distances, snapping photos. It became an obsession. I felt a mix of dread and determination. Karen couldn't keep hiding behind Victor's protection forever. The more I watched, the clearer the pattern became. Then came the next board meeting. This one was worse. Karen brought her phone, waving it around like a weapon, showing Victor her sound logs. Victor didn't just support her. He cut off anyone who tried to speak for me. He leaned over to Karen, whispered something I couldn't hear, and then nodded like he was congratulating her. I could feel the room turning against me, not everyone, but enough to make me tense. And then I remembered my photos from the previous nights. My eyes flicked around the room, and I knew this was the time to confront him. I left the meeting early, quiet this time, Lily in the car. My heart pounded with the realization Victor's favoritism wasn't just about rules or neighborhood harmony. It was personal, dangerous personal. That night, as I put Lily to bed, I whispered, "We're going to win, kiddo. I don't know how yet, but we're going to win." She hugged me tight, her small hands holding mine. "You promise?" "I promise," I said, even though I didn't have a plan yet. But I did have a photo in my pocket, the first real piece of evidence that could blow this wide open. Victor parked at Karen's house, hours. Too late, too obvious. And I knew, deep down, that if I could prove what I suspected, everything Karen and Victor had built, their little alliance, their control over the neighborhood, could crumble. The problem was, taking that first step would make them angry, dangerous angry. And when Karen found out, she wouldn't stop. I knew I couldn't confront Victor and Karen blindly. Their behavior at the last meeting proved that. They had the board wrapped around their fingers, and most neighbors stayed silent, afraid of stirring up trouble. I needed allies. I started quietly talking to a few families I knew. The kind that didn't care about gossip but had eyes and ears. I showed them the photo, Victor's car parked outside Karen's house late at night. Their reactions told me everything. "You're not imagining this," Mrs. Harris whispered. "Everyone's too scared to say anything. You have proof. This could change everything." I nodded. "It's just the start. I need more. I need records, messages, anything that links them. If I can show the connection and her hypocrisy, the board can't ignore it." Over the next few weeks, I gathered everything I could. Photos of Karen's late-night parties, the unapproved swing set, her dogs barking endlessly, trash cans left out for days, and her landscaping violations. I kept a notebook listing dates and times and juxtaposed them with my records of Lily's play. The contrast was obvious. Victor continued to act as if nothing was wrong. At every minor board meeting, he cut off anyone trying to defend me, siding with Karen no matter what. That made me more determined. There had to be some kind of proof beyond photographs. I decided to dig a little deeper. One night I waited quietly, hidden behind my garage. Around 11, Victor's car rolled into Karen's driveway again. This time I watched him go inside, carrying a folder. 15 minutes later, Karen's lights went off. When he left, he glanced around like he thought someone might be watching. I snapped several pictures from different angles. The next morning I approached Greg, who had kids playing nearby. "Did you notice anything last night?" I asked. He leaned closer. "Yeah, I saw him leave. It's not the first time. Something's definitely going on between them. People just don't talk." I took a deep breath. "I need statements from neighbors, anything to back this up. I want it concrete, undeniable." Over the next few days, I collected a handful of statements from neighbors who had noticed Victor at Karen's house late at night. They were scared, but they admitted the pattern was consistent. I also compiled my photographic evidence, timestamps of Lily playing, and notes on Karen's violations. It was all organized neatly. The next board meeting was a Wednesday evening. Karen arrived early, phone in hand, smirking like she'd already won. Victor sat at the head of the table, his posture tight, eyes scanning the room. Other board members shuffled in, a few avoiding eye contact with me. Karen immediately started presenting her evidence again, waving her phone. "You see this is daily noise violations. This is a child disturbing the entire neighborhood." I sat quietly, letting her words hang. Then I stood, flipping open my notebook. "I have evidence as well," I said firmly. "Evidence that shows the complaints are not only false but biased, and that some of these complaints are protecting someone who breaks the very rules she claims to uphold." A few board members muttered among themselves. Victor's eyes narrowed. "Mark, we're here to discuss complaints, not personal attacks," he said sharply. I held up my photos. "These show Karen's property violations. Unapproved landscaping, late-night disturbances, constant dog barking. And these statements, I pointed to the stack of signed papers from neighbors, confirm that Lily's play is within normal limits, yet every violation she commits is ignored. Why? Karen's face turned red. That's not relevant. I glanced at Victor, who quickly looked down at his notes, avoiding my eyes. My heart pounded. I could feel it. This was it. I have proof, I said, my voice rising. Photos, timestamps, and witnesses. And there's something else. Victor, you've been visiting Karen late at night. Multiple neighbors have seen your car outside her house. You've both been abusing your positions here, using this HOA to cover a personal relationship while punishing innocent people. The room went silent. Karen's eyes widened in shock, then narrowed in anger. Victor's jaw tightened. A board member whispered something to another, shocked, and the tension in the air was thick. Karen shouted, "That's a lie, he was." "None of this matters." Victor slammed his hand on the table. "Mark, this is defamatory. I'm presenting facts," I shot back. "Photographs, statements, timestamps. You can't deny this. You've been abusing the board's authority, protecting Karen from violations, targeting my daughter, and intimidating neighbors." Several board members were now looking at me differently. I could see doubt creeping into their eyes. One whispered, "I had no idea." Karen's voice rose to a shriek. "I've done nothing wrong. She's a child, and you, Mark, are trying to ruin me." Victor's face turned pale, and he snapped at Karen, "Sit down, don't yell at the board," but it was too late. The evidence was laid out, undeniable, and the room was shifting. Whispers filled the corners. Other neighbors who had come to the meeting started murmuring their agreement with me. The balance of power was tipping. Karen's husband appeared suddenly at the doorway, holding a letter he'd received from me earlier, giving him a heads up. He had questions, confusion, anger all rolled into one. Victor's wife arrived behind him, tears in her eyes, silently watching her husband squirm. Karen gasped, "No, you can't." Victor's face went from pale to red as the reality hit. All his control, all his authority, the protection he thought he had, it was crumbling. Mark, heart hammering, kept presenting evidence, statements, and photos. Every time Karen tried to interrupt, I countered with proof. Every time Victor tried to silence me, a neighbor would whisper, "We saw it too." By the end of the night, the boardroom was in chaos. Karen screamed, Victor shouted, and neighbors argued amongst themselves. Some demanded Victor resign immediately. Others threatened legal action for the harassment and selective enforcement. And then Victor said something that made the air chill. He leaned toward Karen, whispering, "We can't let him get away with this. You know what's at stake." I froze. That's when it hit me, the protection, the favoritism. It was because of them, their relationship, their affair. That explained everything. I had the proof, the photos, the witnesses, and the knowledge of the secret connection. The next step was crucial. I had to push this through legally, carefully. Karen and Victor had underestimated me, and now the walls were cracking. But as I left the building that night, Karen shot me a glare like I'd just declared war. Victor's eyes followed me, cold and calculating. They weren't done, and I knew without a doubt the fight wasn't over. After the board meeting, the neighborhood was buzzing. News of Victor and Karen's affair spread faster than I expected. Some neighbors whispered behind closed doors. Some stared openly from their porches. I had been careful not to overplay my hand, but the evidence spoke for itself. Karen didn't hide it at first. She tried to storm into my yard, shouting threats about lawsuits, harassment, anything she could think of. Victor's car still pulled into her driveway sometimes, but now the looks on his face were different. Anxious, calculating, not smug. I took a deep breath and filed a formal complaint with the HOA, submitting all my evidence, photos, timestamps, statements, recordings. I demanded action, not revenge, but fairness. The board had no choice. There was too much proof. The first domino fell when a few key board members voted to remove Victor as president. They cited conflicts of interest, abuse of authority, and failure to enforce the rules impartially. Victor tried to argue, but the room had turned against him. No one believed him anymore. Karen lost too. Without Victor's protection, she was exposed for all her violations. Trash cans left out for days, landscaping without approval, noise complaints that didn't hold up. The board voted to remove her from all committees and issue fines for her violations. Her husband, who had remained silent until now, filed for divorce. I saw him standing across the street one afternoon, shaking his head, face red with anger. Victor's wife left him as well, packing her things quietly while neighbors watched. I didn't gloat. I didn't need to. Watching the downfall was enough. The neighborhood itself was changed. Rumors flew, conversations were tense, and the board had to start over, rebuilding trust with neighbors who felt betrayed. But for Lily it was a victory. She could play in the yard without fear of decibel meters, hidden cameras, or threatening letters. She ran across the grass that afternoon, skipping, laughing, her energy spilling freely. Karen stood on her porch, arms crossed, glaring at Lily. Her smirk was gone. She looked smaller, somehow defeated. Victor's house was quiet now, empty of the late-night meetings and secretive glances. The HOA began to implement stricter rules to prevent personal relationships from affecting board decisions. Transparency was suddenly the most important rule of all. The board held meetings openly, neighbors were encouraged to participate, and the culture of fear that Karen and Victor had built slowly began to crumble. But the scars remained. Neighbors whispered about the affair, about favoritism, about the intimidation tactics. Trust was shattered. Some families moved away. Some avoided the backyard completely, worried about what might still be monitored. I didn't let it affect me. I spent the weekend setting up a small play area for Lily, swings, a sandbox, and her favorite slide. She ran around shouting with joy, stopping only to ask me to push her on the swing. "You know, Daddy," she said, "I think Karen's mad I can play now." I smiled. "She's very mad, kiddo, but you don't have to worry about her anymore." That night, as I tucked Lily in, I felt a sense of relief I hadn't felt in months. The fight had been brutal, exhausting, and relentless. But we had won. The HOA couldn't hide behind authority anymore. Karen couldn't manipulate rules or people. Victor couldn't abuse his position to protect her. Still, there was a dark undertone. The neighborhood would never be the same. People would whisper, families would remember the chaos, and Karen and Victor's betrayal would linger as a warning. But at least Lily could grow up without fear in her own yard. I checked my phone one last time before bed. Emails from the HOA confirmed the fines for Karen, the board's restructuring, and Victor stepping down. I didn't reply. I didn't need to. Justice had been served. Outside, the wind rustled through the trees. I could hear Lily laughing in the yard again, free to play as she always should have been. I walked to the window and watched her, my heart lighter than it had been in months. Karen and Victor were gone from their positions of power, humiliated publicly, and the HOA was in the hands of people who actually cared about fairness. But there was no rejoicing, no celebration, only relief that the worst of it was over. I knew we'd won the battle, but the neighborhood itself had lost some innocence. People would remember Karen, Victor, and the way they manipulated the rules to hurt others. The scars they left weren't visible, but they were there. For Lily, though, the future was bright. She ran across the yard, spinning in circles, laughing louder than ever. I watched, smiling, knowing that no one could take this moment away from her. The storm had passed, Karen and Victor had fallen, the HOA's corruption had been exposed, and for the first time in months I could breathe. Justice doesn't always fix everything, it doesn't erase fear or frustration, but it does restore balance, and balance, even in a broken neighborhood, felt like a victory. Karen stood on her porch that evening, glaring at Lily, arms folded tight. Victor's house was dark, empty. Their empire of control had ended, and yet, as I watched my daughter run freely, I realized something important. Even in the most corrupt and twisted situations, you could fight back. You could protect what mattered, and sometimes that fight was enough. No one got away unscathed. The HOA was scarred, Karen and Victor's lives were ruined, and Lily was finally free to be a child again.
I would like to thank you for watching the video to the end. To encourage us to make more videos, please like, subscribe, comment, as well as share.